This is one of the most frustrating things in woodworking, a strip screw, and it has nothing to do with your drills, your bit, or even your technique. You're buying the wrong screws, and I'm going to show you exactly what to buy instead. Let's go. Before we get started, if you'd like to check out anything that I show today, there's links in the description, the pinned comment, and of course, if you're watching on TV, you can scan the QR code with your phone. It takes you right to my website. Let me talk about screws. One of the most frustrating beginner mistakes when you start out that nobody tells you about is the right screws to buy for what application you're going to use them in. I've had some projects go wrong because I stripped a screw or even used the wrong screws in the projects that wind up costing me later. So you want to make sure you select the right screw for your project. In the 1930s, auto engineers needed a screw that would not over tighten. So Henry Phillips developed the Phillips head screw, which is where it gets its name from. Because once it reached a certain torque, the bit would cam out of the screw. In other words, it would strip or come out of the screw head so that it would not over tighten. This is a feature and not a flaw. Fast forward to today, and woodworkers are trying to use a screw that was engineered for auto manufacturing Ford back in the 1930s. And we wonder why it keeps stripping. It's not designed to work for what you're trying to use it for. Now let me show you this. I'm trying to drive a Phillips head screw into even soft wood like this pine, and you'll see that it starts stripping. It's camming out. It's doing what it was designed to do. But if I change to a Torx head screw, when I drive this in, it goes in all the way very smoothly. Even if I'm trying to drive a very long screw, like a 4-inch screw into this pine, it gets a lot of torque behind that, but it goes in smoothly without stripping because a Torx head was designed to do that. And a Phillips head was designed to do exactly what you see, camming out or stripping. Both using the same drill speed, same pressure. That's a Torx drive screw, or some people might call it a star drive. The big difference is you get 6 points of contact with the Torx head and you get 4 points of contact with the Phillips. This is one of the single biggest upgrades that a beginner can make, is just changing from Phillips to Torx. Before we go any further, I have to address the elephant in the room. That's Smitty. This is not a wood screw. This is a drywall screw, and no matter how many times you put it in wood does not make it a wood screw. Stop using these in your wood projects because they're not designed for that, for a few reasons. The main reason is, for one, they're just steel screws, so they'll rust if you try to use them outside. But the main reason you don't want to use a drywall screw, it doesn't matter if you use coarse thread or fine thread drywall screws, they all have a fatal flaw. Not only are they Phillips head, they're brittle, they're hardened steel. So the lateral pressure will actually make them break. I drove these screws in a little bit and I took my hammer and just hit all 3 of these screws. The only one that shears or breaks off is the drywall screw. All of the rest of them will bend because they're not hardened, brittle steel. So if you're using this in a project and there's lateral pressure, it will snap. A lot of people pick up drywall screws because they're dirt cheap. You can buy the buckets full and just get bunches of screws, but they're no good for woodworking anyway. They're meant for drywall, and that's where you should use them. Now let's walk through a screw's anatomy. There's more that meets the eye on a screw, and you have to know what you're looking for so you know you pick the right one for your project. First, coarse versus fine thread. Fine thread screws just means the threads on that screw are tighter together, and coarse means they're further apart. Typically, in most applications, you're going to want the coarse thread for wood. One of the only reasons you'd want a fine thread screw is if you're doing hardwood joinery with screws, especially pocket hole screws. They have finer threads for hardwood, coarser threads for softwood, just because you get more grabbing power with the coarse threads. You'll want to use coarse threads most of the time in woodworking. Now, if you look at the tip of some screws, you'll see a little notch in there. It almost looks like a drill bit because it is. This is called a self-tapping screw. This helps grab the wood early on in the screw to keep it from moving it all around on you, and it helps drive it through the board. This does not always prevent splitting at the end of the board. You see, I drive this screw at the end of this piece of maple, it's going to split like crazy. If I use a pilot hole, in other words, just drill a small hole that's a little bit smaller than the screw size itself through the wood, and then I drive the screw, I don't have to worry about the wood splitting, especially closer to the ends. So if you're having trouble with that, just drill a pilot hole before you put the screw in. You also may notice partial versus full thread. A full thread means threads go all the way up to the head of the screw. Partial means there is a space between the head and where the threads start. There's a reason for that. If you look at a pocket hole screw specifically, it usually has a very large shoulder where there's no screws on there. And the reason for that is when you drive a screw through wood, if you have threads all the way up, it's pulling both pieces at the same time or trying to pull both pieces together, and there's nothing to slip. When you have a space where there's no threads, the threads lock into the board on the bottom side that you're screwing into, and it pulls the top piece down into that bottom piece. That way it doesn't push up on you. If you ever notice when you're trying to drive screws, a lot of times boards push apart. If you use partial head screws, that'll happen less often. Even if it does kick up a little bit, once you get past the threads into the board, it'll go ahead and sink it on down in there, and you'll have to back the screw out and then back in to get it to fully seat. In a nutshell, use partial thread screws if you're joining two boards together. And finally, there's head types on the screws. There's a bugle head that's kind of like a tapered shape. What that does is help you seat or countersink the drill bit. It'll push the wood fibers down so that this goes below the surface or right flush with the surface, where a flathead screw just basically stops on the top of the wood and will be sticking out. It's really the only difference there. Now there's three basic drive types that you're going to encounter in woodworking. Number one, Phillips. Phillips is still around because it's been around for 80 or 100 years. It's been around for a long time, and change is slow. This is probably one of the worst ones you can pick for woodworking in most applications. There are a few caveats to Phillips head screws where you'll still use them in a woodworking application. That's hinges and drawer slides and things like that. Phillips actually works fine in this situation because you're not driving that screw or pushing it anywhere near the torque settings that would make it cam out. Square drive, also called a Robertson drive in some places. In the US, most of us call it square drive. I think Canada calls it Robertson's. Let me know. This is just a square notch. You get 4 points of contact on there. Almost all pocket hole screws are going to have a square or Robertson drive head. And third, Torx Head is the other drive type. 6 points of contact. The geometry or the design of a Torx Head actually is designed to pull the bit in toward the screw more so than the other ones, so that it kind of locks it in place. You'll notice that you can just stick the screw on the Torx Head and have it not fall off. Try to do that with a non-magnetized Phillips head. Not going to happen. This helps also when you get ready to drive that screw. Torx is one of the better woodworking screws you can use for most general projects and even structural projects like decks and things like that. Pocket hole time. Now, pocket hole screws and wood screws are different. You don't want to use a wood screw in a pocket hole project because they are designed differently. A pocket hole screw is specifically designed for that pocket hole. If you try to drive a regular wood screw into a pocket hole, because of that bugle head or that V-shaped head, it'll just keep driving and blow out your pocket hole. That's not what that's meant to do. You need a pocket hole screw that has that flat head on it, because that grabs the piece that you're driving through and then pulls it down into that piece you're attaching it to. They are specifically meant for this purpose. You'll want to make sure to use pocket hole screws in pocket hole applications. Pocket hole time. Indoor versus outdoor screws also makes a big difference. If you're building outdoor furniture or decks or anything like that, you'll want to use a specific or a screw specifically designed for outdoors, because a standard screw will just rust and break if it's just made out of standard metal. For structural connection like deck framing, pergolas, anything that's going to be outside, you'll want to look at either GRK or SPAC screws for that application. If you're near water and you're building docks or decks or anything like that, or even high humidity areas, you might want to look at stainless steel screws because they won't rust. They're just better for that application. And for pocket hole screws specifically, you'll find these blue coated screws for exterior. These are Craig versions, but they have a coating on there that also prevents rusting. Any outdoor project I've ever made, I always use these outdoor pocket hole screws if I'm doing pocket hole joinery. Now, before we get to the box store trap, there's a few accessories or things I think you need if you're going to be driving screws. Number one, you need a drill or driver of some kind. There's a bunch to choose from. One of my favorites is the Milwaukee M12. DeWalt makes good ones. Whatever battery type you're on, just get those. Next, countersink bits. One of the best things you can buy for woodworking is get a good set of countersink bits. I've got this wood owl set. There's various different brands that make these. I'll link to my favorites in the description. A good bit set is worth its weight in gold. I love this DeWalt set because it has every drive type that you need. Phillips, Torx, flat, even square drive, all in one kit. That's why I picked this up. And then finally, a magnetic tray is one of those things that just makes your life easier, because you can put your screws or your drive bits or anything like that in there and it keeps them secure. They won't fall out, especially if you're working on projects. Now, don't fall for this box store trick that most beginners do. This is what most beginners buy. It is a random assortment of screws because you want to have some on hand and they're cheap. You go to the big box store, it doesn't really matter which one, or Amazon or anything like that, and you can buy these dirt cheap all day long. And a lot of beginners will go in there and buy those because they think they're saving some money. And it's actually going to cost you money if these start failing or you're stripping out or anything like that. At least it's going to cost you a lot of time trying to get that strip screw out of that project. There's 4 screw types that you should buy if you're just starting out. Number one, the Torx drive screws. You can get these in a variety of sizes. What to do is I have several varieties here on hand. I keep them in these small parts organizers. I'll drop a link to my favorites below. But it just makes things very simple. I know when I'm getting low on one size versus the other ones, and it just helps me keep everything nice and organized, so I'm never scrambling around looking for that 1¼ inch screw that I know I bought somewhere. Pocket hole screws, I keep a variety of those on hand as well, including outdoor and different size or lengths of those screws as well. When I say size, I mean lengths of screws is what I'm talking about. Spacks, the coated screws, I keep some of those on hand just because if I need to replace a deck railing or anything around the house that's going to be outside or outdoors, I want to use those screws for that. And then finally, stainless steel screws. I do have some of them on hand, the whole box here. I'll drop a link to this box. I know they are Phillips head, but I do like to keep some of these on hand because if I do put something outside that I need stainless in, at least I have an assortment I can reach and grab. I do need to get some Torx versions though. Here's some homework for you. Go into your shop and look and take an assessment of what kind of screws you have. If you still have that Folgers coffee can from 1982 full of those rusty drywall screws, throw them out and get some new ones. I'll link to the screws shown here today so you can order those and get them in your shop soon. So when you need them, you'll have them. If this video helped you at all, please hit that subscribe button. It helps me and I really appreciate it. And never do that with your table saw. Most beginners do. Click that box, get you the big old virtual fist bump.